sections, and the first is to talk about the process, which the Honourable President of the Treasury Board has referred to in his comments. But there's a couple of observations that I'd like to make. I continue to be dismayed and perplexed, actually, about why we see such frequent requests for supplementary supply and the amount and the number of departments that are affected. I have a chart in front of me that staff were kind enough to make up, and it only goes back to 2000, actually, since I've been here in the 96-97 fiscal year and on. There's been at least one, and often years, two supplementary supply estimates every year. And I accept that there are some things that you need a supplementary supply budget for. For example, forest fires. We hope there's not any. They have to put some amount in the budget, and then you deal with what you get. Fair enough. I understand that, and I would expect to see that happening. But this has become common practice with this government, and it is far, far more than covering the costs of forest fires, or this year, the extraordinary costs of H1N1. You can certainly see a clear explanation for why that couldn't be anticipated down to the exact dollar. But I am more concerned with what I see as a planning and perhaps a management deficit, in that this is now commonplace. We just expect it, at least one or two a year. And it's covering not one or two departments, but 9, 10, 12, 14 departments, often more than half of the departments that this government administers programs through come forward in a supplementary supply estimate. And at that, I have to call question. We have 9 departments in front of us this year. So I'll put that on the record. And, you know, the government always gets up and says, oh, well, you know, come on, give us a break. There's been all kinds of things we couldn't anticipate. But I have to say, with the resources behind the government, with the time and care and expertise they're able to call upon to work out things like the projected price on a barrel of oil within, you know, a minutia of a cent, or gas, or their royalty rate. I mean, they clearly have a lot of expertise to pull upon for certain areas when they're interested in it, but I just feel they get sloppy in the rest of the areas and could be doing a better job overall on tightening up their original budgeting process. Second thing I'm seeing in the budgeting process, again, I would call it a sloppiness, except for it's worse than that because there's an intent behind it. And I want to be careful to convey that I think this just isn't a matter of, well, whoops, didn't pay a lot of attention. I think this is deliberate. And what I'm seeing in last year's budget and this year's budget, and we see the effect of last year's budget in the supplementary supply in front of us, is a lack of budgeting. When closely questioned on items that are in particular departments, and just about any department, but certainly the ones I witnessed, I would often hear back from ministers, well, we're working on that. Well, we're developing a policy. Yeah, well, we'll figure out a way to do that. Well, you know, don't forget we've got such and such a plan or a strategy coming. And the world that I come from, which is the not-for-profit sector, a budget is clearly a plan on exactly how you're going to spend the money, where your revenue is going to come from, how your expenses are going to go out. And you've got to be pretty tight on that stuff. You can't say, yeah, I think I'm going to produce a show at the Citadel, and it'll be $1 million, and it'll have some actors in it, and be written by somebody. And yeah, there'll probably be costumes. You got to know what you're doing. But that is what I'm seeing from the government. And I'm beginning to wonder if they actually are budgeting for particular programs. you know, in this year, again, as I questioned, I actually got the Minister for Community Development and Culture and Community Spirit got a little snippy with each other, because I said, where's this money going to come from that you're going to find somewhere to finance this thing that you don't have enough money for? And he said, I'm not going to talk about that. Excuse me? It's a budget debate. You're supposed to be able to defend to me what you're spending the money on. Well, I'm not going to talk about that. Really? Where are you going to get the money from? What programs are you going to take it from? Oh, we'll see. But that's what the budget is for. It's a plan of how you're going to do it. And if you can't tell me how you're going to do that as we go through the budget debates, that's telling me the government doesn't know. And that is going to put us in much deeper problem down the road. The third observation I want to make is the amount of information that's actually contained in the Supplementary Supply Estimates booklet that we get. And usually the requests that are coming forward under supplementary supply tend to break into a couple of different categories. We're not talking, 15 different ways that money is going to be spent. Even when you look at the health budget, which is one of the larger ones, as the President of the Treasury Board observed, it essentially breaks into 4 categories. $343 million to fund, I'm quoting here from page 24, $343 million to fund Alberta's health services accumulated deficit as of March 31st, 2009, and it gives you 4 lines of description there. So it's breaking into not very many categories. But we're not getting a heck of a lot of information here. And let me use one of my critic portfolios as an example as to how little information is given here and how easy it is to give more information. On page 16, under the supplementary supply estimates requested for culture and community spirit, one line. The supplementary amount of $2,888,000 is requested to provide for site reclamation costs incurred at various historic sites related to environmental liabilities that were expensed in prior years. When I questioned, and the President of the Treasury Board was kind enough to stand and give an answer, that actually covers 3 locations. What was the problem with listing the 3 locations in this booklet? Well, it's another line of ink. Was that going to break you? To just be able to say this much for this facility, this much for this facility, and this much for this facility? I'm not quite sure what all the secrecy is about. The need to sort of open the book for a quick little glimpse and then shut it again. If you want us to cooperate with this stuff, what is the problem in actually giving us the information on what this is about? Even the health and wellness budget, okay, it's costs of responding to an H1N1 pandemic. What exactly was that? Could we get a better description of how that breaks down? Again, you've got a full page. You could fill up the whole page without it costing you more money in the booklet. It's blank. You could fill it with information. It wouldn't kill you. But it contributes to the idea that this government is fixated on secrecy and keeping information to itself. So I'm just trying to help you out, just trying to make you more popular than you already are, and, win over some more friends to your side. But honestly, you could give us some more information there. Housing and urban affairs. 2 lines. Look at all the page you could have filled up telling me what you were up to with that money. So that's just a wee little suggestion for you to follow up on, but I think it would be helpful. These, as we encourage people to become more interested in what we're doing in this assembly, they do follow along online. They do watch the podcasts. They watch the live audio and visual streaming. Some of them are getting very educated, well educated in following us. And they're interested in that kind of thing too. So I think the ability of the government and just one person, one little opposition MLA standing up and saying you could give us more information is going to give way to a lot more people saying, hey, what is this? We want to be able to see what this is about in a more reasonable way. And again, I'm not saying I don't want a volume. I don't need tens of